Hello and welcome to the Reading School Committee Candidate Forum. My name is Vanessa Alvarado, and as the chair of the Reading Democratic Town Committee, we are happy to be hosting the second annual event. I'm here with the committee's treasurer, John Lippett.
Thanks, Vanessa. On April 7th on the ballot, running for 2 seats for the school committee are incumbent Erin Gaffin and candidates Jeffrey Coram and Lori Hayes. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Glad to have you here in our audience. And we'd also like to thank the volunteers who are making this event possible. I'd like to introduce and thank our moderator, Jen Hillary, and our interviewers, Megan Fiddler-Carey and Tom Grant. And in the back, who you can't see, is our timekeeper, Ralph Pearson. Thanks very much. And finally, thank you to RCTV for airing this live and also showing the recording of it between now and the Tuesday, April 7th election.
And most of all, thank you to all of you for joining us this evening and for voting on or before Tuesday, April 7th. In-person voting will be at Reading Memorial High School Fieldhouse from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th. Mail-in ballots will be sent out shortly, and you can request one up until Tuesday, March 31st. And lastly, early voting is available Saturday, March 28th through Thursday, April 2nd. Please check the elections page on the town website for hours. We'll now hand it over to Jen, who will tell you a little bit about our volunteers and explain the rules and format. Jen?
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, John, and the Democratic Town Committee for hosting. Good evening to everyone present tonight, everyone at home. Good evening to our candidates and our interviewers. My name, as mentioned before, is Jennifer Hillary. I am a Reading resident, a Precinct 4 town meeting member, volunteer in our schools and community, and I am moderating tonight. Our interviewers are Megan Fiddler-Carey, who just celebrated 10 years living in Reading. She is an alumna of the Reading Cultural Council and serves on town meeting in Precinct 1. Megan and her husband Charlie are about to complete their first year as empty nesters since their daughter graduated from Reading Memorial High School last year. Tom Grant has lived in Reading for 17 years and is a town meeting member in Precinct 4. Tom and his wife have 4 boys, 3 of whom are currently in the Reading public school system, and 1 graduated from Reading Memorial High School in 2024. Now let me explain the ground rules for tonight. Each candidate, Mr. Coram, Ms. Hayes, and Ms. Gaffin, will be invited to make an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes. We drew lots for that order. All questions asked tonight are of a non-personal nature and answerable by all candidates. Additionally, each candidate will receive 2 opportunities for rebuttal to be used during the course of the forum. They have 2 minutes to respond to each question and 1 minute for rebuttal. They can use their rebuttals at any time, but they only have 2. The timekeeper, Ralph Preston, is at the back of the room. He will display a green sheet at the 60-second mark, a yellow sheet at the 30-second mark, and a red sheet to stop. Let's begin. Our first question, Ms. Carey. Oh, pardon me. Our opening statements. My apologies. Mr. Coram.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you to the Reading Democratic Town Committee for hosting this forum, to Vanessa for organizing it, to Jen for moderating, to Tom and Megan for asking the questions, to Ralph in the back for timekeeping, and to RCTV. My name is Jeffrey Coram, and I would like your vote for school committee. My wife and I moved to this town, to Reading, 25 years ago, and we chose this town primarily for its schools. I have had the privilege of volunteering in the schools for 20 years, in the classrooms, in the lunchroom, on field trips, and on extracurricular activities. I was also treasurer of the parent-teacher organizations at Birch Meadow, then Coolidge, then RMHS, serving for a total of 12 years, and filing all the paperwork to obtain tax-exempt status for 2 of those PTOs. I continue to help build sets for the RMHS Drama Club, something I've done for over 10 years now. A shout out to that club for making it to the finals of the METG Theater Fest this year. I've been on the Town Finance Committee since 2021 and served as a liaison to the school committee, and I briefly served on the school committee itself as an interim member in 2019. Although my children have graduated, the Reading Public Schools did an excellent job educating them, and I am still passionate about education and deeply invested in the success of our schools. I believe my experience at all levels of schools will be helpful to the new superintendent, and I thank the current school committee members, including Aaron, for all their recent work to try to get that person in place before the election. My experience on the Finance Committee would be helpful as the town faces the prospect of an override in the near future. Thank you for this opportunity to earn your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Coram. Ms. Gaffin.
Good evening. Thank you to the organizers and our volunteers and everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Erin Gaffin. I am seeking your vote for re-election to a third term on the Reading School Committee. For 20 years, my family and I have called Reading home, and serving this community for the last 6 has been one of my greatest privileges. My approach is shaped by a unique 360-degree view of our schools. I'm a former special educator and administrator. I'm a current town meeting member. I'm also a local realtor who understands that the health of our schools is the heartbeat of our town. But most importantly, I'm a parent with 3 children currently navigating different stages of their educational journeys. These roles keep me grounded in the day-to-day realities of our families. Over the past several years, I'm proud of what we have achieved together. We've transitioned to universal full-day kindergarten, strengthened our academic pathways in math and literacy, and secured the critical support needed for the new Killam Elementary School. But beyond the what, I'm equally proud of the how. On this committee, we bring different perspectives, but we move forward with mutual respect. We listen, we challenge the administration when necessary, and we always start from the same goal, doing what is best for students. There is still vital work ahead, from navigating our budget challenges to ensuring every student feels supported and seen. I'm committed to meeting those challenges with the same preparation, transparency, and collaborative spirit I've brought to the table the last 6 years. I'm Erin Gaffin, and I ask for your vote to keep our schools and our students moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Good evening. Thank you, Jen, and the organizers, the candidates, and the volunteers, RCTV, and also those other in the audience and on TV watching. So my name is Lori Hayes, and I've been a resident in Reading since 2011. I've raised 2 children in the Reading Public Schools. My son is a senior and will be attending Bentley University in the fall. My daughter is a sophomore and attends RMHS. There are a few things you might not know about me, or may not have read about me either, that have shaped my perspective, a perspective that may be different from the others in this room. I was raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to provide stability for our family. She was my role model, and from her I learned the value of hard work, personal responsibility, and empathy for families doing their best with limited resources. I attended elementary school in Alabama in the mid-1970s at the start of desegregation, and I was bused across town. At that age, I learned how easily children from different backgrounds can connect and how important that really is. I also learned to read using an early experimental alphabet of 44 phonetic characters, and it was an experience that shaped my belief in evidence-based instruction and early literacy support. Those experiences shaped my perspective. Reading is a wonderful community, but it is not one-dimensional. Our students come from families with different incomes, learning styles, cultures, and challenges. I bring to Reading a perspective grounded in inclusion, evidence-based practice, and compassion. If elected, I will work to ensure our schools serve all students, including those who need patience, structure, and support to succeed. Every child, all means all. Thank you for being here tonight, and I'd be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. As moderator, I will be alternating first responders to each question, and I will be similarly alternating the interviewers. So if we can begin, Ms. Fiddler-Carey.
All right, thank you. So my first question for you all is, are there any issues any of the current school committee members have been championing that you disagree with or may have a different perspective on?
And we'll begin with Ms. Hayes.
that have been championing but may not agree with. I really can't think of anything that I don't agree with at this point. There are, I guess there is the question about phones in the classrooms. That actually has become a national issue based on students having attention deficit disorders and other disabilities and issues based off of perhaps a lot of screen time. That is going through the state legislature right now, and it has already passed the Senate. It is at this point to be reviewed by the House, and that proposal is bell to bell, so it would be all day long. Students would not have their phones all day long. While I agree with the notion that perhaps that should be limited, the amount of time students have access to their cell phones in school, I believe local policies are probably a better option for that than just a blanket statewide bell to bell. There are obviously going to be some exceptions to that. Some students, particularly ones that require it for talk-to-text learning through the special ed program, that would be an exception. There are safety issues that parents are worried about with respect to not having access to phones in schools. But it's something that I champion, but I also have some reservations about.
Thank you. Ms. Gaffin.
So this is going to sound really boring, but no. That's the short answer. We work really well together. I think that even if maybe I came at something thinking I knew where I stood, we've been able to talk it through as a committee. I try to listen to different perspectives. I'm trying to remember the last time we had a major vote that wasn't 6-0, and it's sort of escaping me right now. So I think I credit the superintendent and the administration for having really clear goals for the district. And they take that collaborative style of, really listening to all stakeholders. So nothing is done in a vacuum. They seek feedback from the teachers, they seek feedback from administrators in central office, and bring us that insight, and then we're able to discuss it as a committee and decide what we can move forward on. So I feel like that's not a very exciting answer, but I don't think there's anything sort of happening on the side or that you've seen publicly that I would say I'm completely opposed to this other member. I would say we're quite aligned on the direction and hoping to find a new superintendent who can slide in and keep the train moving.
Mr. Coram.
I guess I'm going to be almost as boring as Aaron, because I also don't have a lot of objections to what the current school committee is doing. There are a few policies that I've spoken up on and have a little different wording or emphasis that I wanted to share. There was one budget issue in this year's budget that I thought might get them in a little bit of trouble. The choice this year to use not only so that the way that they've been budgeting with the school choice money, it comes in 1 year and then they spend it in the following year. And for the coming 2027 fiscal year budget, they have decided to use not only the previous year's but also the current year's budget. So that makes a hole for the following year, fiscal year 28. And I think I would have tried a little harder to even that out across the different fiscal years. The other question, maybe it'll be a later question, is there was an issue that the current school committee members did not take up that I thought they should have, and that was the question about school bus cameras. There was a state law that allowed communities to vote to approve school buses to have cameras to catch those people speeding by the bus when its stoplight is out. And the school committee decided not to take a vote on that because, in part, the buses are run by North Reading. It's contracted out to North Reading Transportation. But my feeling was you should go ahead and authorize that such that give a signal to the bus companies that this is something we think is important for the safety of children, and go ahead and approve it in our town and then see if other towns join us and the bus company then agrees to add those cameras. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corum. Mr. Grant.
Thank you very much. My question is regarding one of the most important things a school committee has to do, which is dealing with and selecting a superintendent. If you could just maybe reflect on what is perhaps different about the school systems this time going into this search than our last search, and some of the key things that you're looking at when it comes to selecting our next superintendent.
And Mr. Corum, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah. Very good. So if I think back to the previous superintendent, there was a lot of, I don't know, I would say, difficulties in communication that I don't feel that all of the parties involved were strongly involved in discussions. And I think this time, Dr. Militeskis does a really good job of communicating with all the stakeholders. He does a really good job of not agreeing with everybody, but at least helping you understand where he comes from and why a particular ask that you have can't be done now. Maybe, what are the other parts of those decisions that you maybe hadn't thought about before, and really motivating that. He did a great job of motivating the school committee and the town to support this the full-day kindergarten free for the families. And I think we need another superintendent who comes in who can communicate, look, we're facing down a potential override, operating expense override. I need you to understand why it's important to support that override, and all the work that has been done to try and continues to be done to try and save money so that we can extend the length of the previous override from 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Corum. Ms. Hayes.
Okay, so the last superintendent search was on the coattails of a little bit of perhaps not the best administration, and we were looking to make lots of improvements with regard to reading curriculum, trust within the whole community, transparency, communication, and 100% focus on children, their safety, and their success. That has turned around 100% with the new superintendent that we've had for the past several years. He's an amazing person. At this point, we're looking at a completely different situation. We're looking for continuity from the goals and the mindset, the mission, the equity statement, the whole culture that is in place right now. There's trust among the school committee, the teachers, the administration, the families, the students. There's buy-in, and this is the area that we need to make sure is continuous moving forward. So those are the aspects that we want to cultivate, right? Make sure that there's continuity with openness, with the focus on children, with making sure that we have trust, and that we stay a community that works together easily, moving forward with the same objectives as we've had for the past several years. That's worked so well.
Thank you. Ms. Caffin.
It's going to be hard to fit into 2 minutes because I would say that practically everything feels different than when I was elected 6 years ago. So putting aside that schools shut down 2 days after I was sworn in, there was a lot of mistrust between families and school administration, between teachers and school administration. I think a lot of aspects of our school system were sort of working in silos versus working together. There was a top-down management style that just was no longer working for us. And communication was not where it needed to be, not even close, in hindsight. So I would say I was very proud to be an integral part of bringing in the current superintendent. He's been nothing short of amazing for our district. What I appreciate now is we have a much more collaborative model. It feels more cohesive. It feels like what's happening at the elementary schools is happening at every elementary school. What's happening at the middle school is happening at both. There's more cohesion at the high school. The high school is just a happier, better functioning place, to be quite honest. One of the very first things we did as RPS leadership was create an equity statement. And that just sort of set the tone for the kind of work we were going to be doing together. I could say a lot more, but I'm running out of time. So I would say the next superintendent, I will be looking for someone who will continue to be very collaborative and value and listen to all the various stakeholders, from families to students to staff to teachers. Communication is paramount, and I want to support students in being challenged where they're at, not trying to put a cap on that ever.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffin. Ms. Fiddler-Carey.
So with this in mind, with the importance of the new superintendent search, what do you see is the role of school committee in supporting a new superintendent's leadership while also carrying on the good work that's already underway?
We'll start with you, Ms. Gaffin.
Okay. Well, thankfully, I've done this once before, so I feel very well equipped to help the next superintendent. I think that Dr. Milichewski invested a lot of time in listening his first year. Not that nothing changed, not that, he sat back, but I really appreciated how much time he spent meeting with school committee members one-on-one, meeting with principals one-on-one, meeting with his central admin team, getting into classrooms and schools. He was very, very visible. And I think that's how you get a feel for the real essence of our district and how awesome it is. So I hope that, I would encourage the next person to do something similar. Just spend time with all these stakeholders so that you really get a sense of things. We are not looking right now for someone to come in and, bring tons of new ideas, new direction. I think people are pretty happy with the direction the schools are going in. It's not perfect, but it's been going in a very, very good trajectory. So I think what's most important is supporting the administrators, supporting the staff, supporting the teachers in what we have in place, what we've been putting in place to keep things moving in that same trajectory. So I would say time, communication, and listen to your stakeholders.
Mr. Coram.
Yeah, so I agree with what Erin has said. Happy that most people seem to be happy with the direction that the schools are going, and I would encourage, obviously, the superintendent to seek out those people who are not happy with the current directions. Find those little pockets of dissent that may arise here and there that people say, oh, everybody thinks it's great, but so they don't maybe feel as empowered to step up. So help out with the listening to the current student, staff, administration, but also to former student, staff, and administration to understand, what was it that was broken? If somebody left the district, why was it that a teacher left Reading Public Schools to go somewhere else? Is there some way to reconnect with those teachers or students who left? And, what was it that you felt was really great about Reading that we should continue or we should bring back? So I think my experience, having been involved with the schools for 20 years, I have a little more history and some further connections to help out the new superintendent as he listens, or he or she, I should say. Oh, terrible. Just the last two have been male, so, but certainly I've heard.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I feel bad about that. So.
Ms. Hayes.
Okay, it's a good question. So I think it'll be really important to ensure that the new superintendent understands the district vision and buys in. I mean, I think that's part of the process of just selecting the person, but to make sure that that is explicitly clear. Including also program goals, programs and their goals, and expectations, policies, which clearly that's our remit, make sure that it's clear to them, and the roles, and make sure that they understand, maybe it's someone that hasn't been a superintendent before, make sure they understand what those clear roles and responsibilities are. One thing that would be really important for them, I believe, is to make sure that they know ahead of time the forecasted major issues and the timing. Now, they'll have to do some homework, but it's important for the people on the school committee to give them the heads up so that they're not caught flat-footed, and that will instill continued trust, transparency, and collaboration. Definitely support introductions across the entire system. I did have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Milczewski last week and asked him about some of these questions, and he will be able to have some overlap with the superintendent, so perhaps that will help us with a little bit more continuity. But I think those are some of the key aspects, making sure that you have open communication, are honest, try to help them as much as possible, especially if what we're looking for is someone to continue to carry the torch that we've been carrying so far. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
As each of the candidates have recognized in some capacity at this point, the school committee works very well together right now. Could you speak a little bit about your style and how you might both maintain the current productive culture on the board while also advocating for the changes that you believe in?
Ms. Hayes.
Okay. So in a previous career I had was as a project manager at Pfizer and in the industry for 34 years. Towards the end of my career, I was a project manager in matrix teams, which are cross-functional teams for which you have no direct advisory responsibility for. So you have to have influence. And these are major projects with large budgets, lots of time and investment. So my style is to be collaborative. My style is to work collaboratively across groups for buy-in, making sure it's transparency. Again, also making sure that you have a risk assessment so that people are not caught off guard. Really, my work style is rolling up my sleeves and getting work done. And if you can do that in a matrix environment, which maybe not everybody knows what that is, but now you do, all the better. And this is like an ultimate matrix environment. So I do believe that my experience, my background, the amount of experience that I have and the depth will be an asset to Reading in this instance.
Mr. Coram.
So I've actually been to a number of the school committee meetings myself and spoken up, and I feel that I have contributed positively, and that I haven't been rabble-rouser or something to stir up trouble at the school committee. And also, I've served on the finance committee for the past 4.5 years, and that body is also a very collaborative body where, most of the time, actually when I was first asked if I wanted to be on finance committee, I said, what's the point of finance committee? They always get up at town meeting and say, on such and such a date, we voted 8-0 to support this article or to recommend this article to town meeting. So what's the point? And the point is that we get a bunch of people, up to 9 people together in a room, and some of them say, I'm over here on the budget, and some of them say, I'm over here on the budget, and we work together to get somewhere in the middle, and then all of us vote 8-0, 9-0 for a compromise that we've all agreed on. So I think I could bring that same ability to compromise and to work with other people and to listen to the points that they're making to the school committee if I were elected.
Ms. Gaffin.
I mean, hopefully the last 6 years have shown that I am willing to work with different perspectives, different personalities, different viewpoints, different stakeholders. I'm willing to listen and try and make an informed decision, always keeping what's best for students at the forefront of that. And I think if the person I'm talking to is coming at the conversation with that same intent, then it's not so hard. It's not so hard to find the middle ground there. I think that the current administration has done an excellent job of being fairly transparent about these are the things we need to work on. These are the things we are working on. These are the things we think are going well. And that allows me to then have an open dialogue with people about things. Like, we're not trying to sugarcoat what's not going well and what needs to be worked on. We're not trying to sugarcoat that, but budget issues are coming, and they're coming quickly. But again, I think it's just really important to be someone who listens, who validates, parent concerns, student concerns, teacher concerns, and brings that to the table. I will always defend students, particularly our most vulnerable students, but my goal is also to be a respectful, collaborative member of the committee. There's no point in us arguing and fighting. I just don't think that serves the district, therefore it doesn't serve the students. So I think we've gotten very efficient at our meetings, in part because, we're there to get the work done.
Thank you. Ms. Fiddler-Carey.
Okay, so you've now gotten your seat on school committee. How do you plan to respond to pressure from the federal government when they're cutting funding and they're telling states and municipalities to cut specific programs? How do you respond?
Mr. Coram.
That's a tough question. But clearly, we want to stand out there for the students, for whatever programs they need, whatever support they need. We need to be there for the students. And the federal government has certain funding levers that it can pull, but we're fortunate to live in a fairly progressive state that's generally opposed to many of the most harmful decisions coming from the federal government, so that we can, I think, hope and work. The school committee has traditionally worked very well with the local legislators, including Jason Lewis, although he's retiring, as well as the state representatives, to make sure that there's funding at the state level for some of these things that are not going to be funded at the federal level.
Ms. Gaffin.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, and it's a scary scenario for me, to be quite honest. I think that it's very unfortunate that certain terms have become like lightning rods for the federal government without a full grasp of what that means. So I'm just going to use DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as an example. Just the term DEI sets some people off, but what it means is that we want our schools to be a safe and welcoming place for all students to come learn. So whether you have a disability, or you have a different skin color, or you come from a different household, or you're coming from Boston as one of our Boston residents, it's all encompassing. And that doesn't go away, that drive to make sure that our schools are safe and welcoming for all students doesn't just go away because the federal government says, you can't do this buzzword anymore. I think also I am hoping that we can rely a bit on our state government, I'm not gonna lie. There are multiple times where I say, like, I'm glad my kids are going to school in Massachusetts right now. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what holds. I know it's important to me. I know that I want kids to get the best education they can get in a safe and supportive environment. Because if kids don't feel safe at school, there's no learning happening. It's just not. So you have to have that as a foundation.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes, so absolutely. In Massachusetts, we do have lots of options, I think, that perhaps would mitigate some of that disruption. In Massachusetts, public schools must prohibit discrimination and provide equal access based on race, color, sex, gender, identity, religion, national origin, and sexual orientation. If it were one of those areas that they were cutting, we as Reading, which have the motto, every child, all is all, would support whatever it is was a deficit, became a deficit. There may be an opportunity to push back depending on what it is too. I mean, maybe it's not fully been realized yet. Maybe they're threatening that they're going to do that, and maybe there are options there. But in Reading, we don't turn kids away. We don't treat children differently, and I think there's no other way to be. So if funding were to be removed, it doesn't change the way things happen. We have to figure out a way to cover that gap, and there are options that we can use. And I think as we even talk about a Proposition 2.5 override, we're already thinking about all those things. But there are very creative ways to try to compensate for something like that in the face of that type of perhaps overreach. One area that, now that we may not have other options to talk about it, that I just wanted to mention is Reading has one foundation that is a 501c3, whatever, the nonprofit, that does have funds that can be used, and people do fundraising, and it can perhaps supplement some areas. I would recommend actually really pushing to get an endowment. There are lots of Reading alumni across the world that perhaps would be interested in donating to that, and we could look at that as some type of funding source to mitigate all of these issues that we potentially could have, or even in the Prop 2.5. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Grant.
In recent years, there's been a lot of noise about removing books from school libraries, some rising to the level of what some people are calling book bans. Examples of what I'm talking about are disputed titles like Genderqueer due to its sexual content, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn due to the use of racial slurs. Where do you stand on removing books from school libraries? And if, assuming this pressure continues, if more of this comes up in our town, how would you handle dealing with such a thorny topic for the RPS?
Ms. Gaffin.
Thorny is a good word for that topic. I do not support banning books. I don't support removing books. I don't support limiting access to books. Books are for learning and exploring, and I think it is absolutely vital for some children to see themselves reflected in books. And for some children, that's an incredibly rare find. I read Genderqueer when everything was going on with the library board a few years ago. I think that part of it is we have to trust that families are going to support kids in what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and what they want them reading or what they don't want them reading. I don't feel like it's our role to limit what's available. You know, this is not based on book banning, but in elementary school, 2 of my children were quite advanced readers, and the school librarian would sometimes say, "Oh, you can't check out that book. We reserve that for the older kids." And I would get very upset and say, like, that's not for you to say. Like, if that book is going to be too challenging for my child, let my child bring the book home, and then we'll talk about it. Maybe they are capable of reading it. Maybe we're going to read it together. But I think more than anything, what struck me about a book like Genderqueer was, what if some teenager is really struggling with their identity, is really struggling with their will to live, and needs to see themselves in the book. And I think that books serve a purpose for all different reasons. It's not for everyone. And I get why some people wouldn't want their kids to necessarily look at it, but I think I'm not a fan of hiding access to things or making it harder to access things.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffin. Ms. Hayes.
Good question, good question. So Reading Public Schools does have a policy on challenges to books. The initial step is to have a discussion with the principal, the teacher, and the librarian, and if it escalates beyond there and can't be resolved, then it does go to a committee. And in recent years, at least that the computer could even find, there had not luckily been any within the public school system that had been escalated to committee, so that's good news. The other thing about the school students at Reading, in the Reading Public School System is I believe, someone can tell me if I'm wrong, that any student that attends Reading Public Schools does have access to the Reading Public Library. So that really is also good news. If there happened to be something that's not in the school library, because they don't have quite the same number of volumes there, they do have access to this library. And one piece of information about the challenge, even at this library on that book, was that the Board of Library Trustees did have some options available that they voted on, and one really creative option that they had was to create a tween room, which is very nice. It addressed some of the concerns of some parents and still allowed, easy access to the children to the book. So I thought that was really good. One thing I do want to mention is I've had a pretty long history of supporting literacy in the Reading Public Schools. I have donated more than 400 books to the middle school ELA classrooms and the Reading Memorial High School Library. I've collected over 700 books locally from residents, and then working with the ELA teachers and the lists, and also the librarian at the high school, collected lists of books that they were interested in having, and I was able to provide those to them, over 400 books.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Corum.
I also do not support removing or limiting access to books in the public schools. I trust the teachers to know what's appropriate for their students, to help those students find the books that are interesting to them and relevant to them. I did also read Genderqueer when the library board discussion was up. And when my daughter was in middle school, I remember specifically that there were a number of children kind of trying out different identities, and that my daughter would come home and tell me, oh, so-and-so is using this name now, and so-and-so says they're this, or so-and-so says that. And it was almost like people were trying out this identity and like everybody then jumped around, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Like, I want to ask you what it means when you say you're queer, when you say you're trans, or you think you're something else. And that, it's sort of like everybody piled on to that person and could imagine that student would feel a little bit of pressure in that situation. And that, other students were sort of like, well, maybe I am too, because that person's my friend, and I think I'm like that person, so maybe and that having these books then to sort of pick up, to answer the questions, to look at it and say, oh, that's what that is. Okay, that's not really me, or, oh, I've been having some thoughts like that. So having the ability to find all of these different books and find, what it is that their true identity is, so that they're able to go through those formative middle school years, really, and find their true selves and feel comfortable with their true selves in the Reading Public Schools. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corum.
Ms. Moderator, may I ask a follow-up, please?
Yes, you may. This may be the last question, Mr. Grant, depending on the
then we'll skip
timing.
it.
Ms. Fittler-Carey.
What is the biggest risk currently facing the school beyond budget, and what's the greatest opportunity that the district has?
And we'll start with you, Mr. Corum.
I was going to say budget is the biggest risk, but I mean, there are terrible risks, like an asteroid comes and lands in the middle of the high school, right? I mean, that's a big risk. But in terms of the damage that it would cause to the school, or, God forbid, a school shooting or something, right? That these are big risks, but some of the probabilities of these things are very small, whereas there are other risks that are much more likely that, I don't know, would have a smaller effect than obviously an asteroid hitting the school, but over a wider group of students, right? That, deciding that DEI efforts had to be completely eliminated, right? Or that, the transportation budget starts to eat up a much larger piece of the district budget, or in fact, inflation perhaps is, as we look at coming up in a teacher contract renewal, maybe not this year, but I think it's another year or so, we'll have to start having those discussions. And that's where we start to see that, if we can't come up with the money to get good contracts for the teachers, we start to lose the best teachers, and we start to lose the coherence, the trust between the teachers and the administration, if the administration is seen as being against some of the necessary changes to the teacher contract that the teachers are looking for, that would really, degrade the schools, not immediately, but, over time as the better teachers find better offers somewhere else. So I think that would be the most, most likely risk that's come. And I'm sorry, the second part of the question?
I'm sorry, Mr. Coram, you're out of time. Thank you, though. Ms. Hayes?
So I believe the biggest risks at this point stems directly with the kids. Not money, it's the kids. There's been increased dysregulation, decreased executive functioning, a more complex and different number of kinds of social emotional distress. And it's not changing. A lot of that could be related to COVID, could be related to the increased amount of screen time the kids have access to. Could also be things like algorithms. Kids are on social media and they're being fed algorithms of information that reinforces sometimes even bad thoughts. AI, chatbots, harmbots. Kids have, they feel alone. And we don't have the proper supports for them. So that's the biggest worry. Sorry.
Ms. Gaffin?
So similar to what the other candidates have said, there's a lot of things that could be defined as a risk, but I'm going to choose to go with a topic that we haven't talked a lot about, but Ms. Hayes just touched on. I think the biggest risk facing our students right now is technology. And by that I mean your cell phones, your social media, AI. It's constant. It is constantly in their faces, and their abilities to, chat during the school day on various channels, their ability to hide things from parents, with things like Snapchat that disappear. I could go on and on, but I think it's having a hugely detrimental impact on mental health, but also social development. Like, they're just developing so differently than we did, because a lot of their interactions are through technology and not, just genuine face-to-face unstructured time. I think the opportunity there is to make sure that we are doing education around safe technology use, social media, and all the ugliness that is sort of underneath these social media sites, like how they get you addicted to it so that you want to keep using it and stay on it. I think more education around digital literacy and, figuring out when you're reading things on the internet, what's fact, what is not. There's a lot of dangerous information out there, and our students are in a sort of instant gratification kind of mode where they're getting information just from scrolling on social media sites, and it's dangerous. So we need more teaching and policy around that. That would be the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffin. I will now invite each candidate to make a 2-minute closing statement, and we will reverse the order from the opening statements. So that means we begin with you, Ms. Hayes.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Okay, thank you, moderator, organizers, volunteers, candidates, and those watching. So I'll close with this. Hard work and personal responsibility have always mattered to me. Those values guided a 34-year career in the pharmaceutical industry, including my most challenging and rewarding role as a project manager, developing gene therapies for patients with rare diseases. It required organization, follow-through, clear communication, and making tough decisions, while never losing sight of the people affected by them, the patients. In 2021, I retired to focus on my family and help my own reluctant readers through the academic and social challenges of the pandemic. Being that closely involved, I was able to see how great our schools can be and how certain aspects might improve. I'm running for school committee to help maintain the positive trajectory gained under the current administration, post-pandemic, where everyone in the community believes in, buys in, and is vested in what RPS is doing for our kids. Every child, all means all. We can't lose that momentum. The year ahead will bring real challenges: onboarding a new superintendent, entering teacher contract negotiations, and likely navigating a Proposition 2.5 override. These issues are connected and will require time, focus, and a willingness to roll up our sleeves, always keeping the student well-being and success at the center. I may not have all the answers today, but I bring a track record of getting things done, doing the homework, listening carefully, and leading with accountability and compassion. I am eager to learn. I'm ready to do the work, and I'd be honored to earn your vote.
Thank you. Ms. Gaffin.
Thank you again to our organizers and our volunteers tonight, and thank you for sticking with us for the riveting conversation in the last hour. Serving on the school committee has reinforced what I've always known, that Reading as a community values strong schools and thoughtful leadership. This work requires more than just showing up. It requires listening carefully, weighing diverse perspectives, and making the difficult decision that balance the needs of our students, our educators, and our taxpayers. I take that responsibility seriously. As we look ahead, our district is entering a pivotal chapter. We're preparing to welcome a new superintendent and navigate significant financial challenges. In moments like these, steady leadership is not just a nice to have, it's essential. My 6 years of experience on the school committee have prepared me for this. I helped lead the transition for our current superintendent, and I worked to build community support for the 2018 operational override. I know how to guide these conversations with transparency, fiscal responsibility, and care. I remain deeply optimistic about the future of Reading Public Schools. I ask for your vote so that I can continue our work keeping students at the center of every decision we make. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffin. Mr. Coram.
Thank you. As a school committee member, I would welcome the new superintendent and help that person understand the special strengths and challenges of each of our schools. I would help guide the budget to make effective and efficient use of the funds allocated by town meeting members. I would support thoughtful discussions and policies on the proper use of and restrictions of technology, like artificial intelligence and cell phones. I would maintain the focus on closing the achievement gaps between subgroups of students. But most importantly, I would work to expand opportunities for various avenues of success and to ensure all children feel welcome in and supported by the Reading Public Schools. Most of my favorite memories of Reading are tied to its public schools, from volunteering in my daughter's elementary school classrooms to proudly watching their graduations in 2019 and 2021. I hope you will give me the opportunity to continue to serve, supporting the Reading Public Schools and the children of our town as a member of the school committee. Thank you to the organizers of tonight's forum. Thank you to the other candidates for sharing their answers. And thank you to the audience members, both here and online, for taking the time to listen to this forum. Please be sure to vote on or before April 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coram. I'll now pass the mic to the chair of the Democratic Committee.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for everyone who made this event possible. It's been a wonderful and very informative forum. And I want to thank everybody who's watching here in person or on RCTV for making the effort to be an informed voter here in Reading. I'd like to sincerely thank the 3 candidates we have here tonight and all the other candidates who are running for town office. They offer their time, their expertise, and their thoughtful efforts to serve as volunteers to make this town, to run this town government, and this town would not function without the efforts of all those volunteers. So I would like to thank Vanessa for organizing this. She's put in a tremendous amount of time and effort to pull this forum and the one on Wednesday, which you'll mention together. And I'd like to thank everyone who made this possible and RCTV for being here with us tonight and sharing this as we go forward toward the election. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, John. So please, for those of you here in the room and those of you watching at home, please be sure to mark your calendar for Tuesday, April 7th. And do join us on Wednesday, March 18th at the Pleasant Street Center for the Select Board Candidate Forum. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Take care. Good night.